Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to the Art of Being, a sacred space where we dive into spirituality, healing, manifestation, and all the magic of becoming.
We explore what it means to truly live, to grow, to heal, and to be in this ever-evolving dance between our humanness and our higher selves.
I am Bamzi, a mindset and manifestation coach.
And I'm Joy, a wellness coach. We're so glad you're here. Take a deep breath, settle in, and let's journey together.
Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to the Art of Being, a podcast hosted by me, Bamzi, and my co-host Joy. And we're sitting here drinking some delicious lemongrass tea that smells so amazing. Joy,
Delicious.
How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, and it's so lovely to be here with you for another week doing this.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm so excited that we're doing this finally, because we've just been teasing, and some people that follow me on TikTok know that I've been teasing like a few short clips, and they've probably seen you, but they don't know like what this is about.
Yeah.
And we're finally doing a full episode, and I'm so excited.
I'm really excited, and I'm so glad we're finally getting started.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how are you doing mentally? How has this week been?
It's actually been a really good week, physically exhausting, but overall I would say it's been a good week.
Right.
Yeah, how was yours?
That's good. So I'm currently in the void, and it's actually something that I'm going to be talking about it, and it's going to contribute to what we're discussing today.
Yeah.
So I'm just navigating the void, and for a lot of people that follow me on TikTok, they know that I talk about the dark night of the soul a lot.
Yeah.
It's a period where you just go through so much pain, and you just navigating some darkness, and you're just trying to survive. You're taking it day by day, and part of the thing we're going to talk about is like lessons that we're learning as we navigate this human experience.
Yeah.
And so most of those lessons I'm actually navigating right now as I'm in the void, right? And when I say void, I mean that you've kind of shed an old identity, right? But the new identity has yet to emerge. And so in the moment you're in a space where you don't have an identity, so you're just trying to figure out like, okay, what's up, right? Like not even in terms of like what you do in the world, but in terms of like, who am I? And I guess like there's no one thing that defines that, but the void is like just a space where like there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm navigating, and today we're going to be talking about some of the lessons that we've learned through our journeys. Do you want to start?
That sounds good. I think what you're talking about is like when you're in the void, you're in the state of unknown.
Right.
And it's being in this moment and figuring out, who am I right now in this moment? Because that could change in the next hour, in the next day, in the next week, because you're still figuring it out.
Right.
And I personally think that it's the most beautiful space to be in, because it's like a clear canvas, and you're the artist, and you get to paint whatever you want. You don't have the baggage of the past, but then you have like a clear future where you can literally create anything that you wish and desire. So I think you're in a very beautiful space.
Thank you for saying that. And I do recognize the beauty of that. But sometimes I think because of how we are conditioned as humans, because as you grow up, like you're conditioned to be doing in the world, right? Like some of the ways that people see you is by what you do in the world and the roles that you play. So sometimes when those roles are stripped away, right? Sometimes because of the conditioning, it's so hard to navigate that space where like nothing is happening, right?
Yeah.
Even though I know, like my higher perspective knows that this is a space that can allow like a lot to unfold, like beautiful things to unfold. Like you said, a canvas, right? It's a breeding ground for like what's yet to emerge, and it's a beautiful space. But sometimes it actually takes a lot of work to keep yourself centered.
Yeah.
You have to remind yourself to come back to the higher perspective, to the perspective of the observer having this human experience. But it's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not an easy thing to do, because what's happening is there's not a lot happening in your physical reality in terms of like physical action, but then there's a lot happening within internally, because you're shedding a lot emotionally,
Absolutely.
mentally, physically.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of shedding that's happening, and that takes a lot of energy.
Absolutely.
And it takes as much energy as it takes to be out and about doing things. And it's funny because I remember the other day we were talking about how we're like in opposite
ends. Yes.
Because for me right now, I'm looking at how, balance. How do I stop? Because I've been saying to you, like, I've had so much to do, and I'm so tired and I'm so exhausted. So I look at you and I think, wow, I wish I had what Bamzi has to sort of like just sit, relax, and be in that moment and be in that phase. And then I'd say consequently, probably for you, you're thinking like, okay, I've been in this space for a while. How do I get out and do a bit more? I think it's being human.
Yes.
But then the most important thing for me right now is, how do I find the balance between having that state of rest and being at ease, but also taking action for the things that I need to do in the day-to-day life.
Right.
So my thing right now is navigating that balance. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And even when you're in the void, it's sort of like you're constantly asking yourself, like, okay, is there something that I'm needing to be doing that I'm not doing? Like, that is the question that I'm constantly asking myself, like, because we talk about aligned action a lot, right? Sometimes you have to take aligned action for your manifestations to come forward, right? So some of the things that I've been doing is creating, and sometimes I'm just questioning myself, like, am I doing enough, right? Because I have all this time, right? And you said that, like, yes, I'm spending a lot of energy and a lot of time processing internally, and it requires energy. And sometimes when you're not doing externally, it can feel like you're not doing
anything,
even though there's a lot happening internally. And like I said, it's because of how we're conditioned for the action to be external. So it takes a lot of perspective to remind yourself to always come back and understand that there's a lot that's happening. And that's what I'm navigating. And as we get into this, then I'm just going to get into my first lesson of like what I'm learning in this void. I'm just going to jump right in. So like one of the biggest lessons that I'm learning and I'm integrating in this void is unconditional love for myself. Because one of the things that happens when you're navigating the void, the shadow comes forward a lot,
full force,
right? So one of the things that you and I have discussed about is feeling unworthy. When you don't have anything happening externally, when you're not delivering, like you're not doing things externally, there are no deliverables. Like sometimes you can feel like, okay, so if I'm not doing anything, am I worthy, right? There's like a lot of feelings of unworthiness that come to the surface, right? And those feelings come to the surface because the universe is presenting you an opportunity to love yourself, even when you feel unworthy, right? That's one of the things that I talk about on my TikTok a lot, because when those feelings come, it's not to punish you. It's not to punish you. The universe is being like, okay, you've been conditioned that like doing makes you worthy. Like that's how you've been conditioned. And now you're feeling unworthy, and it's your time to then take the feelings of unworthiness and accept them within yourself. Accept them and without judgment, because that's like the work requires you to observe the feelings, accept them, don't judge them, hold them with love. And that is what unconditional love is all about. And I was watching this girl talking about like how she's also learning to unconditionally love herself. Is, can you love yourself not like in the moments where there's so much joy, but can you love yourself even when you feel like you hate yourself,
in all seasons,
right? Even when you feel like there's just nothing to love, can you love yourself in those moments? That is what unconditional love is about.
I think that's what, to be honest, in my opinion, is that's what all human beings are here to learn. It's a lesson that's common for all human beings, because we love ourselves when things are going great, but then when things are not going so great, we tend to loathe ourselves, or we love ourselves during certain periods and not during others. And so I think I 100% agree with you. That's a key lesson. It's to love yourself unconditionally through all seasons of life. And loving yourself means different things in different seasons of life. So I agree with you that unconditional love was also one of my biggest lessons. But then, riding on that, I'd say my biggest lessons during that time, and a lesson that has remained true then and even now, is this too shall pass. That nothing is permanent. Everything is temporary. Because I remember, I would go through 1,000 different emotions during a single day. I'd wake up with a pit in my stomach, feeling anxious, worried, and then something else would happen and I'd experience states of euphoria. I'd be extremely happy. And then an hour later, I'd be crying, bawling my eyes out.
I know that too well.
Yes, and and consequently, even afterwards, after, I went through that phase and that period, I think what it taught me is, even in my life, when I'm going through intense periods, or something is not working out, or maybe I'm going through a lesson, whatever it is, I always tell myself, this storm is going to run out of rain. It's not going to be this way forever. So whatever state that I'm in, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. And it has really helped me navigate some of the most difficult situations in my life, but also not to get attached to the good moments, because sometimes you can do that as well.
You can get attached to the
okay, this is so good, I want to hold on to it, because I've learned now to hold everything gently and lightly, to be in the moment. If I'm feeling joy in this moment, I'm feeling joy in this moment. If I'm feeling sad in this moment, I'm feeling sad in this moment. And I don't look back and think yesterday I was really happy, why am I not happy today? Why am I allow myself to be in the season and in the space that I'm in. And what has changed as well is my attachment style, because sometimes we can tend to be what's the attachment style? Not even avoidant, no, anxious, which can then tend to be clingy, because you want to hold on to things. So if something shows up and it's what you've been wanting, you want to hold on to it so tightly and not let go. And what I've learned is to just simply be in a state of detachment, allowing, and this is here now, and I'm going to be with it in this moment as it is. Tomorrow it might change, it might take a different form, and I'm okay with that as well. Is it always easy? No. Is it a continuous lesson for me? Absolutely. But it's really one thing that I took with me from that period of time, and it has really helped me navigate on the other end as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you just said, and I think what you touched on without mentioning the word is resistance.
Yes.
Because what you just said beautifully is when you're happy, you allow the happiness and the joy to just flow, and when sadness comes, you allow it to flow without resistance. Because one of the things that allows people to suffer, or one of the things that leads to suffering, is resistance, because pain and suffering are two different things, right? When pain comes and sadness comes, if you allow it, it passes through, because it's a temporary, like you said, right? But when you resist, right, you push it aside, you immediately resist, you go to the brain and create a story about this is the reason I'm feeling pain. You attach meaning to that pain about what it means about you, right? And then you're not allowing it to flow. You're not allowing that temporary stage to go. Then you're stuck in a loop. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Resistance leads to people being stuck in a loop, because as the moment you create a story in your head, that story is going to stick, because the ego loves a story. If there's one thing it loves, is a story. And as long as you resist, you immediately go to the story. And then the temporary doesn't end. You might think that it ends. It might temporarily end, but as long as you created a story, you're not out of that loop of suffering. And so that's definitely something that I've also learned. And I had to learn the hard way, because the first time that I went through my dark night, when it took me 3 years, I didn't have that perspective. So I was stuck in the resistance. I was resisting the pain, even though my body was forcing me to experience it. Like at some moments, like the resistance couldn't even help me.
Yeah.
I just had to I just had to allow the pain.
Yeah.
But I think like when I came on the other side, then I gained the higher perspective
Yeah.
of, okay, things are temporary.
Yeah.
This pain is not here to punish me. It's here to actually make me go within and love myself more and love the parts of me that are experiencing pain and feeling hurt and aching
Yeah.
in the moment.
Yeah.
And then it shall pass, like you said, and then a joyful moment will come.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. No, you said that so beautifully. And I think it also leads to my next point, which is healing is not linear.
It's not.
That was one of my
It's not.
other
I wish
biggest
we knew
lessons.
that earlier.
I know.
Like I wish that's something that we understood.
Yeah.
But you have to go through it.
You have to go
understand.
through it. And for me, I felt like my journey, it's almost like a spiral. And by a spiral, I mean, it's not linear. Sometimes I feel like, oh my God, I've taken 10 steps forward in terms of healing, or I've really mastered this lesson. Then other times it feels like, oh my God, this pattern has showed up again and I'm back where I started. But then each step, each movement forward, each movement backward, even when I feel like I've moved backward, I really haven't. I'm just probably experiencing like deeper layers of healing. It's the same thing coming back in different ways to allow me master that particular lesson or that particular bad habit that I need to let go of in a different way. So I'm not regressing, I'm simply just revisiting and healing a deeper layer. And once it's done, it then shoots me forward.
Right.
So it's just a continuous loop or a continuous spiral. And sometimes we think, certain habits come up and we think, oh my God, I thought I was better than this.
I thought I had learned
that lesson,
Yeah.
but here we go again.
Yeah.
But no, it requires giving yourself grace in that moment, realizing that the first thing, I'm aware that this has come up again.
Right.
I'm conscious of what this pattern is. I mean, that's the first thing that I would say is like a light bulb to show that you actually are evolving, you're healing, and you are learning the lesson. Because if you are not aware, then that, it shows you're not consciously aware that this is a lesson and a pattern.
Right.
But when it shows up and you catch it and you're aware, then you're able to go back and say, oh, I could have done that differently, or next time it shows up, I'm going to do this differently, or I reacted in the exact same old way, but I have compassion and grace for myself, but I'm going to do better next time.
Right.
And so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And that's also like a huge lesson that I've also had to learn. And in fact, I was reflecting about this lesson maybe towards end of last year, beginning of this year.
Yeah.
Because like one of the things that I used to have is having expectations, right? Having expectations about how something should turn out, right? And this is something that used to be so major for me.
Yeah.
I would maybe if let's say I went to an event expecting maybe to make friends.
Yeah.
Right. That was like one of my biggest ones.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, I'm going to this event. Of course, like there's nothing wrong with like going to socialize so that you can make friends, because making friends as an adult is one of the hardest things.
So hard.
So sometimes I would sign up for something because I have an expectation to like make friends, but then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then I would be hugely disappointed. And it took several turns of me doing the same thing, like going to different things and having the expectation, and then me being disappointed to learn the lesson. In fact, I had to be like, okay, like every single time I get disappointed, this is clearly a lesson that the universe is trying to teach me.
Release the
right?
expectation.
Yeah, and it's like
The moment.
even when I thought I learned it, like even after like a few iterations of the lesson, when I thought like, okay, I've learned this, and then it throws me in a different form where like, okay, I clearly still have expectations about something. Like it could be in different forms that you never even thought, right? Like you said, the universe is trying to give you an opportunity to go deeper on that lesson and learn. It's like you said, like it's like peeling an onion. You just keep peeling
Layers and layers.
right? So you're not at the same place in terms with regards to that lesson. It's just that it's going deeper. Like in terms of your understanding, in terms of your perspective about that lesson. And I think like it's so important to understand that when you come back to the same lesson, you're not regressing, because that's what people think, and like you start feeling bad about yourself. you start shaming yourself, like, oh, like, am I not learning? Am I not moving forward? Am I not progressing? Without understanding that this is actually giving you an opportunity to go deeper. You're like you said, you're spiraling, right? The spiral goes higher. You are coming back to the same lesson, but it's on a higher level.
I agree with you. Oh, wow. And the other thing too, adding on to that, is my other biggest lesson was gratitude, the art of gratitude. Why? Because when we're in the thick of things, we tend to not appreciate the things that are in our lives, the things that are working, and we tend to focus on what's not working.
Absolutely.
Why haven't I learned this? Why isn't this working out for me? Why don't I have this thing? Why, does everyone else look so happy-go-lucky, like nothing is happening, and I'm going through this thing? And so what I started to do was have like a gratitude jar that had like little notes. Yeah, and every little thing that would happen to me that I loved, I would write the note and date it, and then put it in.
I love that. Actually, I'm gonna borrow that.
Please.
I'm gonna borrow that.
Yeah, and then put it in the jar, and it could be as silly as I sat out today and the sky was beautiful, or the flowers looked lovely today, or the sun felt good on my skin, And I would write it down, and it would remind me of there's still good things happening in my life. I just need to notice them more. And I noticed that the more I noticed and was grateful for the things that I had, the more those things showed up.
Absolutely.
But then the more I focused on, oh my God, I'm in this pain and this is not happening and that's not happening and that's not happening, I would manifest more of that. And one thing, so I took with me that art of I need to be grateful. And so on those days when I'm feeling down and low, like really in the dumps, I'd go to like my little jar, pour it on my bed, sit, and start reading through like some of the most beautiful and amazing things that have happened to me.
I really love
and
that.
It would bring me back up to, oh my gosh, I really do have beautiful things that happen to me. I sometimes forget about it, and I've kept that practice. It's something that I still do to date. And
I'm actually really gonna borrow that, and I already have an image of you know how you said that you poured them and then you were reading through. I already have an image of like maybe at the end of the year you do like a board, right, where you just paste all the little things you wrote about, and then it just becomes a thing that you frame,
like a gratitude.
I'm gonna borrow that. Give me permission.
It's yours.
Give me permission. And I think like we are definitely conditioned to focus on luck, right? Because if you don't notice little things that are happening, like the good things that are like even the sun, like you said, like nature, those are things that you can be grateful for, but we're taught to focus on luck, like what you lack, instead of like, okay, you're healthy, you have two legs. There are so many people that
health.
Wish like, and I know that when people especially like get sick sometimes, like they're bedridden and they're like, oh my gosh, like I wish I could take a walk. That's something that you hear about, and I think we can learn a lot from people that are not doing well to like, appreciate. And like, and I'm not saying that okay, only for just go look at people that are sick to appreciate your health, but I think sometimes taking stock of like what is going right. You're fully healthy. You can go wherever you want. You can take a walk. Those are simple things that are not available to other people.
No, I do that to myself, not even like other people, and that's important. But like sometimes when I have like a really terrible flu and everything's aching, you know, like those colds and flus that you get, and like every muscle aches. And I remember like last week I was perfectly fine, and I took it for granted, you know.
For me too, when I'm experiencing my period pains. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Like, right? And so it's little things like that. It's taking stock of I'm usually not grateful when I'm feeling great, and immediately afterwards, like I have this surge of energy, like, oh my God, I'm so healthy, and like I go out and take on the world, and I'm so appreciative of what my body gets to do for me on a single, you know, every single day.
It's definitely so easy to lose sight of, you know, what you have, right? And I've found myself in places where like it's just so dark, there's so much sadness that like, because I have the higher perspective, at least I've told myself I need to write like a list of facts. Like this is a fact. You are healthy. You have 2 legs. You have 2 hands. You have all of these things, and like have like this is a fact, right?
Yeah.
And then you just stare at that, so that it reminds you that like there's so much that
to
you
be grateful
have. There's
for,
so much to be grateful for. And it's so important because it's about energy, like you said. It's like where you direct your energy, where your focus goes, energy flows. Right? So if you're directing your energy to gratitude, energy is going to flow there.
Exactly.
And the more you're grateful. And I think it's Michael Beckwith that says that, you know how sometimes parents tell their kids, like, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something. Something else to cry about. So the universe is like, if you don't stop being grateful, I'll keep giving you more things to be grateful about.
Absolutely. No, I get it. And you know, like, I know what you've said about being grateful, about just being healthy. Like, I have functional legs, I have functional hands, my eyesight is great. Because sometimes it's perceptions. You know, people who have like body dysmorphia, and like, I could look at you and go like, oh my God, Bamzi, you're gorgeous. Like, I love your hair, I have your, but if you don't have healthy self-esteem and feel like I love this about myself, and I know this is a bit out of topic, then what starts to happen is that we look at ourselves and we are skewed. You could have like a very healthy
especially
body.
When it comes to body, we are very skewed.
Yes, and
body
that's
dysmorphia
human.
is so real.
Yeah, that's like human beings. And I find that a lot of people in the world, particularly women, I know men go through it as well, but for women, because I think there's so many expectations around how a woman should look like, and sometimes we focus so much on, I need to be this weight, I need to be this, I need to be that, and we're constantly trying to change ourselves. We forget to be grateful for I'm healthy.
Which is the most
body.
important thing.
It's wonderful just as it is. Yes, it's okay for me to want to change it, but I can love myself in all seasons, even as I work on changing the parts of me that I don't like. And I'm so glad you made that point, because I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I was thinking, like, the reason why maybe people are not grateful sometimes is because, you know, like, if something that you don't prefer happens, right, it's hard to be like grateful, like when things like that happen, because immediately, like I was saying earlier, immediately you go to the brain and you assign it a meaning. And which goes to my next point, is most things that happen in life are neutral, and it's the meaning that you assign,
that you give to
it's the meaning that you give that then determines like how you move forward. And I just want to clarify by saying that when I mean neutral, right, I don't mean that like you shouldn't feel sad when something happens and you shouldn't feel happy when something happens. It's you who determines. Like, for example, if you experience a death, that is a sad thing, right? You are going to grieve, right? But there are a lot of events that happen in life, but then people assign them a meaning about who they are. If something happens, you're like, okay, that happened because of who I am, because of my identity. Immediately that puts you in a victim mode. Right? So if you're in the victim mode, you're powerless. You don't have power. And when you're not in a powerful state, the energy that you're going to be bringing in, the energy that you're going to be operating from is not an energy that's going to be helping you move forward. First of all, you're going to be frantic, you're going to be anxious, right? If you're operating in that anxious energy, frantic, wanting to control things, it doesn't really work, because there's a lot of resistance there, right? So it's not going to be helpful to you to create a solution.
I agree.
Right? But if you say, like, if something happens and, okay, just that happened, I don't like it, you know, that sucks. I don't like it. But okay, like, that's life.
That's okay.
That's life. Okay, so then how, like, what are my choices? Right? Instead of being frantic and being like, immediately assigning meaning about you, being like, okay, that just happened. It means nothing about me. But okay, so then what can I do? Do I have options?
Options to this,
Yes. If I don't have options, then like what can I do? What is within my control
in
right?
this situation.
In this situation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Instead of immediately going to the victim, because as soon as you go into the victim, you're going into
You've lost your
suffering.
power. Yeah.
You immediately start suffering
Yeah.
because you go immediately to the mental, and that is when the suffering starts,
Yeah.
and it takes your power away.
I think what works for me, because sometimes like when you're going through a really difficult time, sometimes for me it's very hard for me to remain neutral. And so one thing that I picked up, which is by one of my favorite authors, Louise Hay, and she says everything that's happening is happening for me, not to me. And so I have this little line from one of her books, and it says, this experience is happening for me, and out of it only good will come, and I am safe. And so what happens is, even when I'm going through like the roughest period, I'm always thinking there's a reason why this is happening, and I might not be able to see it now, but it's happening for me, and out of it,
for your highest good.
And out of it something good will come, and I'm safe right now in this moment. And so what that happens is, I'm going through it, I'm accepting the situation, so that removes the resistance, because this is happening for me, not to me. So I'm not in victim mode. I've taken back my power. Out of this situation only good will come. I'm hopeful, and I'm expecting something good to come out of it. And the most important thing, which calms my nervous system down, I am safe, because then I come out of the fight and flight mode, and it's like I'm safe. And I find that it really helps me navigate those really difficult seasons where I'm like, you know what, this should not be happening to me, I don't like it, but there must be a reason why it's happening. And I use that constantly, and I say that phrase to myself over and over and over again consistently.
That's really beautiful. And what you touched on, like what keeps people in that resistance is saying this shouldn't be happening. One of the favorite things that I think it's Eckhart Tolle that I said this. It's like, how do you know that something is supposed to be happening? Because it's happening.
Because it's happening right now.
Because it's
already
happening. And a lot of people don't realize that by saying that this shouldn't be happening doesn't change it from happening. Because it's already happening.
Like, who else do you want to be happening to?
Let's say you lose your job. And I'm not saying like, yes, losing your job sucks, right? But if you lose your job, it's already happening.
It's already happening.
So if you're saying that this shouldn't be happening, you're creating resistance.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't allow you to have that radical acceptance that allows that to pass and allows you to have your power and stay in a neutral state, like we were talking about. Because if you say this shouldn't be happening, you're immediately going to that victim mode.
Oh wow, that's beautiful. Moving on to my next lesson that I learned is that self-care is essential. And for me, it's self-care on all levels. It's what does self-care mean for me in this period and in this season. Sometimes it's like, when people say it's the bubble baths, it's going out and getting my hair done, getting my nails done.
I want to be a bubble bath person one day. I've never been a fan of taking baths. And in fact, in one of my bedrooms, my roommate took the room that has a bathtub. And I took the other one because I was gonna waste it. I never take baths.
Oh, it's one of my most favorite. Water for me is so healing and so calming.
You don't have any water placements, do you? Do you?
I don't have a lot of water placements. No, I don't have a lot of water placements.
I have 2 water placements.
I don't actually.
And I do love water when I go to the ocean. The sound of water, even when I go to Karura, just the sound of water, it just does something to your nervous system. And so water has that effect on me, but for some reason I don't have a thing for baths. For taking baths. But maybe I need to make them luxurious,
like romanticize
and have
everything, romanticize it. And so for me, it's like and when I say self-care, so sometimes it can be as superficial as that. Sometimes it could be setting proper boundaries in place. And proper boundaries mean, do I need to cut that person off? Do I have a negative habit that I'm consistently doing that's not working for me, but I keep repeating it? That's also a form of self-care. If I show up at work late every single day and I know it's bad for me, and I know if I keep it up I might end up losing my job, that's just an example, a good good form of self-care is making sure that I wake up on time, that I set up the alarm, that I, set myself up in a way that I'm going to get to work on time. It's also eliminating the bad habits. If I'm clingy with my relationships and I find that it tends to push people away, what's the best form of self-care in that? It's either going to therapy and learning how to have a healthy sense of attachment. It's painful. I might tap into some childhood trauma that I don't want to touch into in that period of time. But self-care is realizing this is a bad habit that is not working for me and I need to work on it. So it really goes from whatever range it is in that period of time. It's just self-care. Self-care on all levels. Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's external, but what does it mean for me in that season and period of time? Sometimes it's getting that extra hour of sleep in the morning, even if it means disappointing somebody else. That's important.
Absolutely.
So choosing
Yourself.
and what works for you in that moment. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And I guess for me, I haven't focused on the Bible bit. So like, I feel like my self-care goes back to that unconditional love that I'm talking about. And I think because I'm still in the void, so the self-care really is like, for me, it's like going back to like loving even the parts of me that are like so dark. Right? Because I know that no one else is going to do that for me. I have to radically take responsibility of that and love those parts of me, because no one else is going to do that. And one thing that I recently was thinking about is like, self-care is about, like your inner child. Like, would your little girl, like little Joy, would they feel safe with you?
Absolutely.
I mean, like, you have a daughter.
Yeah, I know
she
what
probably
you mean.
feels very safe with you, right? I don't have one, so I'm thinking about little me. Like right now, if she were like in a physical form, right? Because we always carry like our inner child with us, right? But if she were in a physical form, like sometimes when I do a meditation, like would she trust me and feel safe with me, right? 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe no, but right now, yes, because when I'm moving through the heaviest emotions, the sadness, the feelings of unworthiness, abandonment, all of those, that is the inner child. Like that is it's not adult me, because adult me has the perspective and is able to process a lot of those wounds are little me, right? And so if I love them and allow them to exist without judgment and fully embrace them, then I can confidently say that I am practicing self-love, and little me would absolutely feel safe with me and feel loved by me.
Oh no, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful, because if you don't take care of that inner you and little you, they throw tantrums,
absolutely,
and it comes out in the most nastiest of ways. And I absolutely agree with you. And sometimes for me it depends. I like to go through my healing and through those seasons in layers, and it often starts with something physical before I go internal. And sometimes for me it's like, okay, I'm not feeling so good at the moment, so what can I do to make myself feel better, or what my little Joy could feel better. And sometimes it's what I didn't have growing up. Like I could not afford to go to do like retail therapy and take myself shopping, and that has translated into me being an adult that absolutely loves fashion, and I love going shopping. And it starts off with me going for retail therapy, and it makes me feel better in that moment. But then I'll later on look at, okay, that's fine, I went and I bought this and I felt okay in that moment, but then there's something deeper that wants to be looked at. So what is that? And it allows me to not immediately go inwards. So I approach it in layers.
Right.
In layers, it's like, okay, we'll go buy something and we'll be happy, and that allows me to calm down. And sort of like, I view it as a way to sort of like giving a child a lollipop to sort of like calm them down so that they can tell you what's. It's like bribing them. It's like you're bribing them.
I bribe myself too. Like it might not be in like retail therapy, because sometimes when you're wounded and you're feeling your heart is aching, sometimes it's like watching your comfort show. Right? That's my version of retail therapy. It's like what comforts me. Sometimes if I'm not able to really hold the sadness in a moment, because sometimes it's not all the times you have, all the times, and sometimes you just allow yourself a little bit to to just feel good
Yeah.
by watching something that comforts you.
Yeah.
And then once you're in that, you're feeling safe.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you also have to feel safe to experience
Exactly.
the sadness, to experience the heaviness.
Yes.
You have to create that space. And like you said, maybe retail therapy allows you to go
you know,
into those
retail
layers.
therapy is one form. It's in many little things.
Many forms.
It comes in many forms. It could be buying myself like some flowers. It could be going out with my daughter and jumping on a trampoline. It comes in so many different forms.
Right.
But then that allows me to then later on sit and reflect and look at, okay,
right,
that was the first layer. What else am I? Do I need to look at? And when I approach it in layers, it's not coming at me all at once to the point where I'm not functional. Because you know, you still need to get going. You still need to get things done.
Yes.
And that really just allows me to sort of like approach it in layers in a way that I'm still functional, but I'm still healing at the same time.
Yes.
And I'm not just diving into it altogether. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're talking about safety.
Yes.
You're absolutely talking about safety.
Yeah.
Like one thing that we don't talk enough about is that sometimes your nervous system needs to feel safe to experience something. If your nervous system doesn't feel safe, it's just, you might, like that experiencing of the heaviness, of the sadness, you might be bedridden by it. It can be so heavy if you're not ready. So you need to, like you said, you need to prepare yourself slowly, and your nervous system needs to know that it's safe for me to hold this. And sometimes that's what happens when you're thrown in the void. Because for me, for example, I was, hustling, and then I was immediately finding myself in a place where like I didn't have a job, right? Because when I didn't have a job, it was the universe's opportunity telling me that, okay, you are at a point in your life where it's safe for you to experience this and process this. Because before, when you were hustling, you didn't have the capacity. Your nervous system didn't have the capacity for you to experience all this heaviness and feelings. But now you are safe, and then they all come in for you to experience and process them. And that is why, like, little children, the reason why we always have to heal our inner child is because when you're a child, you don't have that capacity. You don't have that perspective. You can't process what's happening to you. So your shadow holds everything, right? It holds everything, allows you to escape. So that when you're an adult, when you have the perspective, you have the capacity, you're able to process things, then you're able to go back and heal those things that you escaped. Because at the time, you didn't have the safety,
the capacity,
and the capacity for you to process that and experience that until like you are a full adult. So safety is so important to process like all the heaviness of life, all the sadness and all of these things. It's absolutely a necessity.
I agree with you. And like leading on to that, my next most important lesson is just accept imperfection. Imperfection in myself, imperfection in others. Because sometimes we tend to hold ourselves to such a high level of perfectionism. Like, I need to heal, I need to get this done, and it needs to be perfect, and it needs to. And when I say imperfection, I mean accepting both my good sides and my not so good sides. That means accepting, like when we say like the light and the shadow.
And the shadow,
and I've learned to accept both sides. Accepting does not mean condoning. Accepting means I know there's this trait and this quality about myself that's not so good when it shows up. So what can I do about that trait, and what can I do about that quality? But not loving myself any less because of it. One of the things that I used to tend to do was wanting everything to be perfect before I started. And so that means I can spend a lot of time in the planning phase, like all the time, constantly, but never actually taking action to bring it into reality. Why? Because I want it to be perfect. And so I've learned that I can start and then learn along the way and edit. It's like doing the first draft, the second draft. So by the time you get to the end, you work on it as you go, if that makes sense. If that makes sense to you. And so I've learned to accept the fact that I'm not perfect and other people are not perfect, and so I don't really I've learned to give grace. That's the word that I'm looking for. Give myself grace and give other people grace. And it's improved my relationships. It's improved how I show up in the world, how I show up, say, for example, like in my career, how I've shown up in entrepreneurship, the fact that I'm ready and willing to take risks and that everything does not have to be perfect. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's one of the reasons why I was insisting, like, okay, let's start with whatever we have. Like, it's not like perfectionism is not the goal. And I think there are a lot of people that struggle with that. And I do think that perfectionism has a deeper layer. It's rooted in the feeling of not being good enough, right? When you're doing a lot of research, preparation, analysis, paralysis, you don't want to start. There's a part of you that doesn't feel good enough about that thing. So therefore, you have a need to project that I'm perfect, right? Because you don't feel good enough within. So the only way you can feel good enough within is if you're projecting that, like if you do something perfectly, and then maybe you get that validation from other people, like, oh, this is perfect, this is great. Like, because you're lacking that within, so you have to project it externally. It has a deeper layer of like not feeling good enough. And it's not, there's no goal of, perfectionism is not a goal. I think the goal is wholeness, accepting whatever, as a human being, you have the light, you have the dark. So I think like the important thing is to accept all these parts of you, like even the parts that you think they're not good enough, they're not perfect. Just accepting everything makes you a whole human being. Right? And I think like that's what we need to strive towards, like wholeness instead of perfectionism.
I agree with that.
So my next lesson is the power of letting go.
Ooh.
That is, if there's one huge lesson that I've learned, is the power of letting go. And in fact, this lesson was, so I think the way it came to me was actually during a plant medicine trip. And before that, I didn't realize how much of my power I was giving away to people. Because when you don't let go, that's what you're doing, right? So let's say you and I have a fit. You and I have a disagreement, right? If we have a disagreement and I'm holding that, right? Maybe the way you interpreted that disagreement is not the same way that I interpreted. If I took it personally and I'm holding it and I'm thinking about it, where you're probably doing something else, you're not thinking about it, you're probably doing other things, right? But I, at night, I'm ruminating about what we disagreed on. I'm saying like, I cannot believe Joy did this to me. And then I'm creating a story. When you don't let go, when you're ruminating, you immediately create a story. You go to your head, you assign a meaning about who you are. Immediately, you assume a victim role. And what happens is that I've given all my power away to you, as if I don't have any power in this dynamic, right? It's if I'm the one who's holding it and thinking about it, I don't have any power. Right? You've taken all my power away without knowing even, right? You're there carrying on with your life, not even knowing that you have my power. I actually didn't realize how much of that I was doing before the plant medicine. And it doesn't have to be like this grand thing. It can be like in subtle ways, even like in subtle disagreements that you have with different friends, different co-workers. Imagine like all the people you have in your life. And how many people do you interact with where like maybe they rub you the wrong way, and then you're carrying all of this weight from like all these people. You're thinking about like whatever they did, whatever they didn't do, they didn't text you, a little action that someone didn't do, they didn't say hi, like all of these things, and you're assigning a meaning about who you are.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because then it's the little things, but then they build up so much, and then at some point it blows up. Like someone does something very small, according to them, and it could be small in that moment, but because you're carrying so much of this hurt, of this anger, of these slights that have happened to you, it triggers you.
Absolutely.
And it comes out. And in that moment that it comes out, I found that it's not about that thing that has happened in that moment.
It's never about that particular thing.
Everything that you've been carrying inside of you. But what I've learned about letting go and how I've started to take my power back. Is I've learned to now have conversations with people. And conversations meaning things would happen, I would get hurt, but then because I didn't want to hurt the other person in turn, I would act like, oh, it's okay. Like, I'm okay with that. That's fine. And I would never raise it. I would never tell them that, you know, you did this thing and it actually hurt me. But then sometimes I'd be with that person and they would do either the same thing or say something about somebody else and it would trigger me. And recently, actually just the other day, I had a conversation with a friend of mine about something that happened, I think a year ago. And you know, she did something that really hurt me in the moment, but it was never the right time to sit down and have a discussion and say like, hey, you know, actually this happened and I was extremely hurt by it, but I let it go and I forgive and I thought I forgave. But then we lost touch for a while, then we came back together and I was so excited that, you know, oh my goodness, we're back in touch and you know, we're friends again. But then I saw something that happened or that she did and it triggered me so bad. And all those feelings and emotions from that period of time came back in the moment.
Absolutely.
And what I realized was that I never processed this. I thought I forgave, I thought I let it go, but I didn't.
You did not.
I put it aside, but I never processed it. And so I just decided like, well, I'm going to have a conversation with this person. And we sat down and I said, you know, this happened and I know the emotion is out of it right now. So it might seem petty, but it really hurt me. And they were actually shocked. They had like a different version of what happened.
Not surprised.
I know. And by the end of it, it's just that we were looking at the same thing from different perspectives and we were okay. Now, suppose I did not have that discussion with that person, you know, I would have continued to hold this thing. I would have continued to think you did that to me on purpose and you hurt me on purpose. And this whole time, they didn't.
They did not.
They did not. They were just holding a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so for me, part of letting go has also been, you know, using my voice and speaking up and telling people in the moment, like, hi, you've done this and I really don't like it, or this does not work for me, or, you know, just speaking up in the moment and not holding it and waiting for 6 months, a year down the line is when I'm bringing up the comment. By the way, you know, this happened 2 years ago and it hurt me and I want to address it now. And so I've learned to address these things in the moment as they happen. And then that means I'm not carrying on to so much baggage that I need to let go of in the first place.
Yeah.
It's a process. I'm still learning. I'm still in it, but I've become more vocal about it. Yeah.
I mean, I was the avoidant queen. Like literally the queen of avoidance. Like I would, you know, and what would happen is that when you avoid so much, when you know, like you said, somebody does something and you don't address it, you avoid the whole thing. Because part of the reason we avoid, it's like people don't realize like you're avoiding, but then it turns out that you're giving your power away. And the reason you're avoiding is because you're uncomfortable with discomfort. Right? You're uncomfortable with, you know, because addressing that is uncomfortable. And a lot of people don't want to go that. So the easier way is to avoid. Right? But then that avoidance doesn't mean that you have your power. Like avoiding actually makes you create a story in your head, right? Because reality is subjective. Like you said, reality is subjective. Whatever I think you did, you probably don't have the same perspective because it's subjective to you. The same way that it's subjective to me, right? So the way that I'm gonna interpret that is not the same way, and I'm gonna carry a story. I'm gonna create a story that's completely different from your story. And if I avoid because of the discomfort that I'm afraid of, then I'm the one who's gonna be suffering. Right? And so I used to be a queen of that, and it's definitely a lesson that I'm still in. I think this is one of the biggest thing that's gonna propel me in terms of like advancing my consciousness. Like this is a huge lesson for me personally. This lesson of letting go right? If somebody does something, I let go, like, right? If I feel like it's not a big deal, they probably didn't mean anything about that.
Yeah.
I let go. And when I say I let go, I mean like I let go of the story that I would have created. It doesn't mean that I'm not hurt, right? It means that if you hurt me, and if I feel like it's not a big deal, that I can go internally, because whatever you did, probably you didn't mean it, but it triggered something within me, right? Because as within, so without, right? So if you do something and maybe like your intentions were not to hurt me, if I'm triggered, it's definitely something to do with what's going on within,
internally,
right? So it's my job to take responsibility. And yes, I might mention to you and say like, hey, like your action, whatever hurt me, and I feel the pain, I feel the sadness, but it's my job to go and address what is going on internally, right? Because if I'm not triggered, I'm not gonna get hurt by whatever action. So I think the letting go is so addressing first what is going on within and taking care of that, and then letting go of the story, right? Because what we tend to do is then create a story out of like whatever action you did. And so that's what I've learned to do, and I'm learning to do.
And that brings me to my next lesson, which is actually tied and related to yours. It's that some lessons are meant to be lifelong lessons, and we master different versions and different layers of it as we go through life. Learning never stops. And I've noticed this in my life. It's where one particular lesson shows up in different, multiple ways consistently. And sometimes I get so frustrated because I'm like, I thought I already learned that. I thought I already mastered it. But then every single time I realize I've actually learned something new. And I think each time I'm healing a deeper layer of that particular lesson. And I'm starting to notice patterns and themes of things that are consistently showing up in my life. And I'm noticing like, oh my God, I think this is a theme or a lesson that will last with me, maybe for an entire lifetime. And it's something that I'm here to master. And it's just accepting that learning never stops. And I'm never, well, let me not use the word never, but I think as human beings, we never get to a point where I've mastered everything, I'm perfect now, there are no more lessons left. I'm going to be consistently learning my whole entire life. And I'm okay with that.
Right.
I'm okay with that right now, because there's a time I was so frustrated where I was like, what? I don't want to learn any more lessons. Like, just leave me alone. Whatever power, great being is out there, leave me alone. Because I'm done. I'm done with the lessons. I'm done with, I don't want it anymore. Because it was so frustrating. Because every time I thought like, I've learned this, I've mastered this, it would then come back again and again and again. And I was so frustrated. But now I'm like, you know what? I'm cool with it. I'm okay.
You know what I think? I think life is a huge lesson of like learning to not resist anything.
Yes.
Because if you're thinking about like, oh, I've already learned this lesson and like I shouldn't be learning it, it's resistance. Immediately you want to resist it. I feel like everything is about learning to dance with resistance. Right? It's just, that's what comes to me. And like, as you were saying, I think like one of the biggest ones that's like a life lesson is, for me, it's about understanding that, and it speaks to what you just said, understanding that happiness is not a state of being. Because I think when we're not like in happiness, we're not in joy, immediately we're like, why am I experiencing this? Why am I learning this lesson? Why is this coming up again? As if it's not supposed to be coming. As if it's not part of the human experience. I think, so I've come to understand that happiness is not a state of being, because like I think we have like a thing of wanting to be happy all the time, or chasing, or feeling like life should be just, you should just be happy all the time, and like all the different challenges and different like sadness, painful moments shouldn't be part of the human experience. That's why a lot of people think like when pain comes, they think it's a punishment, or when sadness emerges, they don't want to experience it, they resist it. I think understanding that it's not a state of being, I think allows you, like we were saying earlier, to like let things flow, let the nature of life take place. Like you have happiness, you have, and that is like a lifelong lesson, because once you understand that it's an ebb and flow, where like some moments are joyful, some moments are sad, because things happen. As long as you're in the human body and this human experience, you're going to experience life, and life means pain and sadness oftentimes, joy and happiness at other times. It's a lifelong lesson. And I think once you kind of have that perspective, then you would allow to just let the resistance go so that like life can flow and you can just learn to have peace even when like the shittiest thing is happening externally.
So my last lesson is the power of connections, relationships, and creating a community around you. And the reason why I've started with relationship, it means because we always tend to think that relationships are external and relationships with other people. But the first form of relationship you should establish is relationship within you. What's your relationship and your connection to self? Because then that in turn dictates how you then relate and interact with the external world. How are you relating to other people? Because if you don't love yourself, how then can you love the people in your external reality?
Right.
Number two, it's, when I say the power of community, it's when I went through that journey, it was really important for me to find other people who are like-minded. And at first it was online, because I didn't know anyone in my surroundings that was going through the same thing as me. So first it started off online, and then slowly I started to find other people who were going through or experiencing the same things as me. There were not many, but then also I didn't limit myself to just that. I also spoke to other people in my life in a different way, but then it was those relationships, those friendships, those connections that helped me to keep going, even when I felt like this is too much. I don't think I can handle this. I don't think I can do it. But then when I had the connections outside of me, they helped me to sort of like navigate that season of my life.
Yeah, I think it's so important, to just have people that validate your experiences. And I think that's why some of these discussions are so important.
Yeah.
It's like having people that tell you like you're not crazy. Because one of the things that people don't understand is that the spiritual experience is so alienating when you feel like you're going crazy. And because we are such a religious community, religious nation, where like a lot of people shy away from talking about a lot of the spiritual experiences, sometimes you can be deemed as crazy. Right? You feel like you're going crazy. There's no one else you can tell, right? Because who's going to understand your experience, right? So having people, community that can validate, like, okay, that you're not going crazy, you're okay. I also went through the same thing. I think just allows you to feel like, after all, this is part of like the spiritual healing experience. And for me, like the community was mostly like in the Western world, because a lot of people in the West share, right? And I'm actually so happy about what's happening in Kenya, because I'm starting to see like different communities, like people on TikTok, people on Instagram, like little communities of people sharing. And I'm starting to see it like bubbling up, because like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, like
it was
non-existent. But now you're starting to see people talk about it, and it's so important because it really validates. And like validation, it's not like you need validation, but sometimes, especially because these experiences can be so alienating, sometimes when you see somebody has gone through the same thing, you feel like, okay, after all, I'm not crazy. There's so many lessons that we can share. In fact, I even had like a bunch of other lessons that I wanted to talk about. But this conversation can go
on and on and on. Yeah.
But like if you're listening or if you're watching us on YouTube and some of them resonate with you, I think like would love to hear from you. Like you can comment on YouTube, or you can go like on Apple or Spotify and rate us, give us your feedback about some of these, and we'd really love to hear from you, engage with you. But for now, we will stop here, and we will see you in our next one.
On the next episode. All right.
We hope today's conversation resonated with you, brought you a sense of clarity, and maybe even challenged you to reflect further on your healing and spiritual journey.
If it touched something in you, we'd be so grateful if you left us a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And if you're on YouTube, share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your reflections or suggestions for future topics.
You can find our socials and email in the episode description. We always love hearing from you. Until next time, take gentle care of your soul, mind, and body.